looks as though the Justice Department might actually be bringing out the big guns against some of the Capitol rioters. According to new reports, the Justice Department has now charged 11 people, including the founder of the right-wing militia known as the Oath Keepers, whatever oath that they're trying to keep, I don't know, but because they have been charged with seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January 6th Capitol riots. So now, Elmer Stewart Rhodes of Granbury, Texas, because of course Texas. Look, no hate against Texans or anything, but y'all got a lot of secessionists coming out there. Secessionists, you know. You might want to see what's going on there. I think we may have a problem with some areas of Texas. The rest of you are great, though. Honestly, though, I love all of America. No, anyway, very, very, very strange segue. Okay, anyway, so now Stewart Rhodes was recently indicted by the federal grand jury in Washington, D.C. and arrested on Thursday morning. So that was yesterday. The prosecutors federal prosecutors say that he and the others have conspired to storm the Capitol and interrupt the tallying of electoral votes in the 2020 election. In a statement, the Justice Department said this, quote, "The seditious conspiracy indictment alleges that following the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, Rhodes conspired with his co-defendants and others to oppose by force, very important, by force, the execution of the laws governing the transfer of presidential power by January 20th, 2021. That, of course, is the day that Joe Biden had taken power. Now, here's what the documents continue saying. Quote, "They coordinated travel across the country to enter Washington, D.C., equipped themselves with a variety of weapons, donned combat and tactical gear, and were prepared to answer Rhodes' call to take up arms at Rhodes' direction. Some co-conspirators also amassed firearms on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., distributed them among a quick reaction force or quick reaction force teams, and planned to use the firearms in support of their plot to stop the lawful transfer of presidential power from, of course, Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And of course, we know that the right wing did not want a transfer of power. They wanted Trump to continue being president, even despite the fact that they had lost. So now, this 48-page indictment had basically detailed how Rhodes and his co-conspirators had planned to stop the transfer of power, and in it they detailed text messages. So now Rhodes began sending these text messages through encrypted applications in November of 2020, encouraging fellow Oath Keepers to oppose that transfer of power. In one message sent November 5th, 2 days after the election, Rhodes told his followers in a message on the Signal app, "We aren't getting through this without a civil war." Too late for that. Prepare your mind, body, spirit. And another message on November 7th. Mr. Biden was declared the winner of the presidential election. Rhodes wrote this, quote, "We must now do what the people of Serbia did when Milosevic stole their election. Refuse to accept it and march en masse on the nation's capital." Civil war. Civil war. That's what they're doing here. I mean, that's what they were planning, and that's what they're trying to do. And so, very, very serious charges here. There's more from the indictment. Rhodes then had convened an online meeting with other Oath Keepers members, during which he outlined a plan to stop the transfer of power, which included preparations for the use of force. Following that meeting, Kelly Meggs, the self-described leader of the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers, who was already facing charges, sent a message to other members saying, quote, "Anybody not on the call tonight? We have been issued a call to action for DC. This is the moment we signed up for." That moment, of course, being insurrection. the forcible takeover of this country. I mean, what oath were they trying to keep? Because it wasn't to democracy, wasn't to this country. That was to Donald Trump. And what they tried to do was to undermine democracy, an actual democratic election. Now, there are more details about how this was planned out. Now, on the day of the attack, prosecutors detailed how the members of the Oath Keepers and its affiliates had formed two different stacks to breach the Capitol building. The first stack entered through the Capitol rotunda and split up, with one half attempting to push through law enforcement outside the Senate chamber, and the second half heading towards the House to look for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They did not find Speaker Pelosi and ultimately left the building. Now, if they had gotten their hands on her, well, I mean, things would have probably not gone well. Let's just say that. I have no love for Nancy Pelosi. But the fact that they were after her, the things that they wanted to do, I mean, I couldn't imagine. Nobody deserves that. Nobody. Now, I talked about two stacks. Well, the second one also breached the grounds of the Capitol, and 3 Oath Keepers entered the rotunda and attempted to push back police guarding the area. Meanwhile, the charging documents allege a separate team of Oath Keepers remained outside Washington and was prepared to rapidly transport firearms and other weapons into Washington, D.C. in support of the operations. I mean, this really does show that this was not a random protest. Now, that's going to come into play because you have people who were aligned with the Oath Keepers, members of the Oath Keepers, arguing that no, this was not a planned event. It just happened. I mean, we were just there and we were just patriots and we were just, peacefully protesting as tourists against the rigged election. Well, that's not true at all. They knew what they were doing. And it was an attempt to, of course, try to steal an election. It was planned out and orchestrated for the purpose of ending our democracy and to usher in fascism. How many people were involved? I mean, again, we know that there were a lot of Oath Keepers that were involved in this. And there's a lot of charges against Oath Keepers and other protesters. But what I'm really concerned about, what I really want to know, is how far this goes up. How far this goes up. And so how many people up top were involved? Did Donald Trump know about this? Did Peter Navarro know about this? Did Steve Bannon know about this? Who knew? And if there is evidence that we find that they knew something about this, that they had even taken part in planning this, then I would damn well hope that we would see some charges, issue some indictments. Or else they might try it again and might even be successful. Now, more details here. 19 people were charged in 3 separate indictments unsealed on Thursday. 11 of those individuals faced these seditious conspiracy charges, while the rest face counts of corruptly obstructing an official proceeding and other related charges. So now each charge, by the way, of seditious conspiracy carries a sentence of up to 20 years in prison, although federal judges do have wide latitude to impose their own sentences. I can only hope that they take this seriously, and if convicted, issue those charges appropriately. It's not a time for a slap on the wrist. All right? We all know what happened in Germany. The fascists that staged an attack, they got off easy, and then they did it again. And you know what happened afterwards? They took over the country and led to a second world war. Now, I'd rather not have any of that history repeated, much less the fascists take over our country. And so, the best thing to do is to stomp it out by actually giving real sentences to these people and making sure that they don't threaten our way of our country again.